I'm not saying that this is the case all the time, but more often than not, when I see people that are out creating information packages for sale, I know enough about the industry to know that the industry is so hard that the individual figured out they can make more money by selling you information about the industry than you can actually make trying to execute inside of the industry itself.
I think there's a difference between entrepreneur and business owner now.
There's definitely a fair distinction to be,
There's a distinction that's growing, I consider myself more the business owner type.
Okay.
Even though what I do is entrepreneurial by definition. If you say entrepreneur, people think of the person in the virtual world, showing pictures of their Ferrari and telling you how you can get a Ferrari too. That's a little different. They do a different thing, and a lot of them don't have a physical location or assets. They do like drop shipping, and they just create brands and create salesmanship and stuff. And I don't think that's necessarily bad. It's different than what I do.
And we are back with another episode of the Julius Files. I am your host, Jasan Julius, and today we have an entrepreneurial chronicle, and I've been looking forward to this one because I have Dustin Ogle with me, and he started his entrepreneurial journey right about the same time I did, and I think we've known each other as far as existence from operating in generally the same area of the world. But I'm going to let Dustin himself actually walk through his entrepreneurial journey. Dustin, how you doing, brother?
It's a good day, man. Good day to be alive.
Is it a good day to be alive? That's the right perspective. Before you start, I want to start this with a story, because I'm just a big believer that you can learn something from everyone and from everything. And you, whether you realize it or not, taught me one of the biggest lessons that I have kept categorized in my brain as far as lessons in general. Yeah. So when we were both young in our entrepreneurial journey, another individual, Joey Kimbrough, Joey put together, remember the business group that he attempted to put together like way back when?
I remember a couple. Was it the one about the health?
Yes, that was what actually prompted it. Was he was trying to get small businesses together to explore healthcare options for small business.
That was super aggressive. I was into that.
Yeah, but like I said, I knew of you, but the reason that I knew of you is because of the headlines that you had been making in the paper, and you were involved in some legal issues fighting the city, and you had won. In the papers, you had won your legal battles fighting the city. So all of us are like, little guy takes on government and actually wins.
Yeah.
But when you actually had time to actually talk, you were like, yes, in fact, I won. But I didn't really win because my bank account took a major hit in all of this. And when you're going up against these government entities that have unlimited resources and unlimited ways to sue you and drag things out, just because I won, I didn't actually really win, because winning, I guess everybody has their own way of looking at winning, but if you're taking on a fight to win, but you win on paper, but your bank account loses, you didn't, in fact, actually win. And I took that as a very large lesson in my overall journey of stay out of the courts at all costs, because even when you win, you don't win. And I remembered that story. That was something that I took away from a very, I made so many mistakes, but one of the biggest ones is learning from that I like, lawyers will bleed you to death. And if you take on somebody else that has the ability to dump unlimited resources into their lawyers,
spend your own tax money against you.
And that's exactly it. So I'm sure it was a painful piece, and if it's something that we go down that rabbit hole, cool. But it was that was my first interaction with you, and that was what I felt was a huge lesson that I applied to my entrepreneurial journey, to stay out of the courts at all costs.
Yeah. Well, you have to, man. If you can't just let the attorneys get all the money.
Yes,
that's what happens. But yeah, that was an interesting case. They left me, not much of a choice. I think they thought that I would just fold, given that my back was against a wall or whatever. But just isn't in me to fold when it's just not right.
Yep.
And what was cool about that experience was I was young still, very young, and turns out there was so many people that were interested in me fighting that battle. Like as soon as I stepped up, I'm like, no, this is just wrong, and you're not telling the truth. And I sued the city. A lot of people were like, man, thank you, awesome. Like they're but ultimately you have to work with your culture and your community and your society and the people around you. So I was never like trying to make them into the bad guy or whatever. Like they were doing what they thought was right and I was doing what I thought was right, and we disagreed.
Yep.
And as soon as it was over, I had to go into forming a new partnership with them, a new relationship. And I did. I walked right in the office. I was like, okay, this is over. So how can I help you? How can we work together from today forward? And I remember the mayor was like, I did not expect this conversation.
And a tactic that, he wouldn't have seen coming.
Yeah, he's like, I really thought, you're going to rub this in our face. And they were worried because after we won the suit, and the decision was that they did arbitrarily abuse their power. I had every solicitation from attorneys in the world to countersue,
to keep going with
and
it,
get a big paycheck from the city, but ultimately decided not to do that. It doesn't do any good to hurt your city either. But they were all worried about it, and they were sure I was going to walk in and be like, okay, now I'm going to sue you for reparations or whatever. And they were just happy I wasn't. And from that day forward, though, our relationship was extremely productive for me and, for the community. So I learned a lot in that whole deal.
So it might have been painful, but standing your ground actually puts you in a better place to actually reputationally propel yourself.
Yeah, it got me a lot of respect from the higher ups in the government too. Not that I won, but that I won and I handled it in a very cooperative way.
That you actually the follow through.
Yeah, I didn't rub their face in it. I didn't talk trash to the media. I never said a bad word about anybody, and I didn't sue them for millions of dollars afterwards, which I probably could have.
Yeah.
Instead, I developed a relationship with them that would help me earn millions of dollars. It was the idea.
I mean, the perspective of it too is that you very well could have done that and picked up a payday, but what it did was lay the groundwork for you to actually be an entrepreneur inside the community.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to do.
So, backwards, because I know the highlights, but I'm like, for the listening audience, you want to give a brief overview of your entrepreneurial journey, starting, from whatever beginning that you would like to start at.
Yeah, sure. Where do you start, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's the first risk you took.
Yeah. Yeah, well, as soon as I graduated college, I quit my job and started my first business. I worked a lot before that. People are like, you're pretty young, you were 28 years old, but the reality is I've been working since I was 13. Things are a little different now, but
just a little bit.
I'm not even sure you're allowed to even work at 13.
No, the thing is, they didn't pay attention to the labor laws in our time the way they do. From what I understand, they're pretty strict about it now, to the point that I won't bother, even like if you're not 16 years old, I'm not going to bother with it. It's too strict.
Yeah. Right. So I'd worked a lot of different jobs, and while I was in college, I got into business. I was running business operations for other companies, and I had some success at that. So ultimately I was like, I'll do this for myself. And the timing was, most people would have seen the timing as terrible, because as soon as I graduated, it was in 2008 and the economy collapsed. And we live in a manufacturing town at the time, and everybody was laid off. All the property values went to shit, but I saw it as an opportunity. I was like, there has to be something that I can do. And it was a bar, alcohol. Lots of people were laid off, but with lots of time on their hands and
and sub-paying unemployment kicking in. And,
yeah.
Yep.
So I accommodated them as the best I could.
Mhm.
And then I did lots of bars and stuff after that. And I've gotten into various businesses and a salon and manufacturing, formulating and manufacturing professional skin and hair care products. Started for my salon and distribute out to other salons and directly to clients. So since '08, I've been strictly an entrepreneur, like going on this whole wild journey. I don't know exactly where to jump in and talk about it, but it is a wild journey.
I mean, I do want to ask, just because of the way you frame that, at what point did you look at yourself and say, I'm no longer capable of being an employee for somebody else?
That's a good question, because, you start with this backup plan in mind.
Right?
Like,
and a backup to the backup.
yeah, like, okay, when I screw this up, like, where can I get a job? When did that go away? I never immediately felt like I never want to work for someone again. But when I realized I couldn't, was probably when I got into one of my businesses where I was completely, I'd worked my way into complete ownership of the assets and the business and bought out partners. And I was like, okay, I've got something about that whole process. And then getting to that point, I was like, now I can't go back there, because it's not just me anymore. Now there's a tremendous amount of people that rely on me for their whole life. And by that point, they'd been working for me for years. And so it's a sense of responsibility for me, I think. As soon as I felt responsible for other people's lives, like their whole career, I was like, I can't go back, because it's not just me. I owe it to these people.
Well, and it's like you get to that level of autonomy to where you're like, you know what, I could not go back to that. But at the same time, you're taking on way more responsibility than anybody could ever fathom when it's just being responsible for yourself or your home environment, being responsible for employees and the livelihood of others. It's a different kind of responsibility. It's a different level of heaviness.
It is. It's interesting.
Getting we searching for the autonomy and the freedom only leads to such a deeper level of responsibility in general.
Yeah, it does. And if you're trying to control everything and govern everything, I feel like that's a pitfall. Then you just keep spreading little pieces of yourself out too far,
Then again, we go back to that. Did you always naturally understand and know that? Or is that something that I refer to myself as a recovering control freak? It took me a lot of time to understand I can't do that.
Yeah. I think every entrepreneur goes through the process of learning that. Yeah, definitely. I definitely didn't always have that. I started off, controlling as much as I could. I think there's a pitfall for entrepreneurship that it has a lot to do with the responsibility, and you can really seek to have power and control. Mm-hmm. Power's like, imposing your will and then trying to control and govern everything. And it's really easy to get into that, but that's not a terrible strategy. It will work for a lot of people. It does work for a lot of people. But the better one I've found is to have strength and influence instead of power and control.
I agree.
And what that really means is you have to be a little more introspective, because if you notice, at least I think, every business is some kind of reflection of the person in charge of it.
I'll agree with that statement.
Some kind of reflection of it. Even if you're a behind-the-scenes owner, you're still making decisions. Mm-hmm. So you have to be introspective a little bit on, what your personal progress looks like. Are you doing something to maintain your strength and turn yourself into a person that doesn't tyrannize the room when you walk in, doesn't make people feel scared and afraid, but instead turn yourself into the pillar that when you walk in the room, people feel like it's all going to be okay. You know what I mean? Like, okay, things are going crazy, but he has his shit together and he's in charge.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's the influence piece on that.
And I had to come to terms with that, because it was like, they say you want to weather the storm, and I laughed, and I'm like, no, I am the storm. I can be a bull in a china shop.
Yeah, we all can, yeah.
While at the same time going, well, my real strength is being able to walk into the storm and bring calm.
That's right. And there's something special about it too, because ultimately you don't want to govern everybody's every move.
Correct.
For lots of reasons. One reason in particular is other people do stuff way better than me.
Mm-hmm.
But what I have to do is have the strength to give them the space and allow them to do it and trust that they will, That takes strength. You can't do that with power and control.
And I mean, I want to ask, because I've been down that road with Matt, but I mean, over a lot of years, there's just a tremendous amount of trust there. How many times has that backfired on you?
Yeah, well, people will fail.
Yep.
I don't think giving people the trust and the faith increases the prevalence of people failing.
Okay.
I think generally it's kind of the opposite. If you pull it off properly, you give people a little bit of encouragement and meaning and responsibility, something bigger than just their paycheck. And humans want that. Mm-hmm. They thrive on that. They take it seriously. I think that it actually prevents people from choosing a path of failure more than, controlling them.
And I don't disagree with that at all. My business coach pointed out to me that I went to the other end of the pendulum to a fault, that I want better for people than they want for themselves.
Yeah.
And that's where I find it's not the disappointment of the failure of trying to control. It's the disappointment of I'm trying to give them the latitude to be the best that they can be, because I see all of that potential. And then they themselves don't want to live up to that potential. And then that's where I find myself in disappointment, because I see greatness.
Yeah.
I just don't see them pursuing their own greatness.
Yeah.
And it's that both sides of the pendulum of where you're going to find failure and disappointment in. You need other people in order to be able to accomplish what we accomplish.
Yeah, you're right. Then that's the nature of it. If everybody that could work for you would turn out to take their best path, mm-hmm. It would be amazing.
Wouldn't it?
But if you have a decent strength and you're not afraid to objectively look at the truth, as a leader, you can say, okay, this isn't working out. And it's gotten harder over the years with the change in culture, but I'm a big fan of having very direct, tough conversations with people, because, and I had some experience with this because I was forced to do it by a company I worked for. So I had to fire people and I had to have bad conversations with people that were underperforming. And I was like 23. It was a weird thing. I had no skills. I was like, well, figure this out as we go. I learned
those hard conversations.
And I learned a lot of things too. For one thing, if you're firing somebody, there's no reason to talk to them about other stuff, mm-hmm. because they don't want to hear shit out of your mouth.
If the firing's coming, just bring it.
Yeah, just say, I'm sorry, we're letting you go. That's the only way to have that conversation. Nothing else you say is going to be good.
No, I'm not going to disagree with that, because it's like, if you're going to, quote unquote, waste the words, you should be wasting the words on something that a relationship you're going to be trying to move forward with. And if you're not having intent on moving forward with the relationship, then there's really not any words. The separation just needs to occur so that you can both move on with your lives.
Yeah, and they're not going to agree with you.
Yeah.
Because you just fired them. They don't give a shit what you think.
Or do they have to pretend to care anymore?
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I learned that by having a metal office chair thrown at me from across the room we were in.
Oh, wow.
I was like, well.
It's about like Bush getting the shoe thrown at him at the microphone.
Yeah, I was like, man, lesson learned. Uh-huh. Say less. Got it. But the flip side of that is you can turn people around with a tough conversation. Sometimes people need to hear the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look somebody right in the eye and you tell them, like, you're failing at this, and I'm telling you instead of firing you because I believe in you,
Mm-hmm.
you can do better than this. You can do something really good here. I know you have it in you, but right now you aren't doing it. Those are tough conversations.
Mm-hmm.
But I hate to sound like this, but in today's day and age, some people can't handle that and they'll melt down.
Yep.
That can't be my problem. My problem is to protect my business for the other people that work there. And I have to be fair and I have to hold people accountable because the market holds me accountable,
Mm-hmm.
right? Also, I owe it to the people to tell them their truth, like it's my job to give you encouragement and an accurate assessment, to tell you the truth. Like, I'm not your friend. I mean, I am friends with some people that work with me, but primarily you can count on your friends to support you every time you make a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
You should have a boss that you can count on to tell you when you're failing, I think. And from my experience, about 50-50. Half of those conversations, those people will turn around and end up being the best person I've ever worked with. And the other half will either quit or find a way to get fired in a few weeks.
Yep.
After that. So having the conversation, though, is doing your job as the leader, because you're making something happen.
Mm-hmm.
And you're leaving the person, you're letting them be responsible for what happens. You've told them, so now they can either turn it around or die.
And it does come to a personality issue, because I waffle. When I say I waffle on whether to assign it to the generation or to take generation off the table, because you have those types of personalities in all generations. So as much as I want to generationally assign it, because that might be the predominance of the generation I'm dealing with right now, when I look back over the history of my career, I'm like, no, I've dealt with both sides of those people that they either want that input because they want to grow and they want to develop those own accountability muscles inside of them, or they want to be victims and always find where everybody else is the problem and they're not, and that's not necessarily a generational assignment itself.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and the reality is businesses don't want victims to work for them. They try, we try, but the problem with people that can only tell themselves a victim narrative is they can never take responsibility for themselves. So they can never progress.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes them a very difficult person to be in a business relationship with. And it's not because I don't like their narratives, their victim narrative. It's fine. Keep it. Write it in the book, publish it, and get past it. And now let's take some responsibility and make something happen here, man.
And the thing is that, we go back to that proverbial pissing people off. I am anti-victimhood. And it's not to say that there aren't people that are legitimate victims of circumstance or a victim in life. But when you look at the bigger picture, nothing good has ever come from victimhood. Nothing good has ever come from latching onto that victim mentality. You might get some sympathy or empathy in the moment, but I don't know of anybody that has ever gotten long-term support from people by constantly playing the victim card. So I'm sitting here on my microphone going, reject victimhood.
Yeah,
because if you want to, for yourself, that's exactly it. Because if you want to develop credibility, if you want to develop any type of respect, rapport, reputation, don't build it on victimhood, because nothing good is going to actually come out of it, whether it be in your personal life or in employment. But yes, I love how you stated that, as entrepreneurs, if we're going to build a business, show me a victimhood mentality and I will show you a red flag that I'm how can I get this person out of my organization?
Yeah.
because they're toxic to the overall organization and culture.
Yeah. I mean, it's true.
That's
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, no, you're right. It's like they're
just that simple.
It really is that
I think
simple.
sometimes it's just to let that truth ring out, because a lot of people aren't saying this, but I'll tell you right now, any serious business leader doesn't want a victim narrative person to come work for them.
No, because if that narrative spreads, you're going to kill your business in totality. That's
one good reason. There's a lot of good reasons, but that's definitely a good one. Is a lot of people that are stuck in a victim narrative do try to recruit other people to their misery, and that's a bad. Like I'm not overly judging people for that. I'm just telling you the really clear truth is that businesses don't want you.
mm-hmm.
Like, it's not a good mutual interest relationship.
And that's the thing right there, because you mutually beneficial. Like when I see that victim mentality, I will see how the person is lashing out where, oh, well, I bet the business does this and I bet the business does this. And I'm like, the business is in business to do commerce. The business is in business to actually make a profit. It has to be a mutually beneficial relationship. And if all you're doing is looking at a business that you chose to apply to work at, you chose to actually earn a living off of that business, but you're going to be a victim and direct all of your woe is me's towards the company you decided to work at, well, then expect opposite reaction. The business that chose to employ you is now going to develop resentment for their decision to employ you because of the negative you're actually bringing to the work environment that affects everybody in the overall environment.
That's right. That's the oppressor story. There have been oppressive companies, but you can't assume they all are. You can't. But here's another truth. I've worked for a corrupt, oppressive business, and I still did fine because we had a mutual interest, and I was still able to take responsibility for myself and progress myself, and I got what I needed out of our relationship.
And so you learned something from it.
Yeah, because I learned there are ways to be strong and to not allow yourself to be affected by corrupt and oppressive companies and people. And should the day come where you need to actually leave, great. But what good does it do to stay and tell this story and be a victim? I can't see a benefit to that for people. But it's popular. It is popular.
But I mean, that's the sad truth, is that there is growing popularity for that narrative.
Yeah.
And people wonder why there's pushback to it. Like, because nothing good has ever actually came from it. Just because it's growing in popularity, or it's the easy way out of not looking in the mirror,
right.
That doesn't mean it's right.
You're 100% right. But the problem with these conversations is you can't tell people this because they won't hear you. All they'll hear is you must also be an oppressor and corrupt, and you're trying to.
That's exactly how it comes out.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, it's not only is it a fair, valid point, I'm receiving it because I'm going to be me, and I'm going to talk about what I'm passionate about and what I feel strongly about. My hope is that I am such a good employer, that I am building such a strong culture, that if people try and project that on me, that I'm not going to have to defend myself, that my organization will defend me by saying, he's not what you're trying to project upon him. He is just telling the truth, and we wouldn't be the organization we are if he was like that. Yeah. But it's a very fair statement that I want to receive, because at the end of the day, I'm not denying that I want to be influential.
Yeah.
But in a positive way. There's no point of trying to tell somebody like you're a victim and you're just going to fuck up your own life, but it either goes over their head, or they somehow find that as fire to twist it and just deepen that victim mentality and go get help to where then it's directed back towards me. Obviously that's not the intent. I'm sitting here going, you're in this delusional place. How can I get you to snap out of it and see you're being your own worst enemy? And I'm like, then I come back and say, is that even possible? Or am I pissing in the wind? Is it even worth having the conversation?
That's a lot of work for a business leader who has a lot of other shit to do, to try to help somebody who doesn't want to help themselves. That's a big ask. Generally, I think it's best just to do the right thing as often as you can and not worry too much about how people respond to it. You'll have strife, internal and external strife in the culture at large and the culture in your business. And sometimes you just can't sort it all out for people. Sometimes you just have to keep doing the right thing for them and wait for them to see it. That's usually my strategy when I run into that dilemma you're talking about, which is, that dilemma of you can't help but it seems like you're hurting if you're trying to help, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's usually when I just close my mouth and carry on and give them the space they need to come around.
Well, and the funny thing is that in my younger years, I would work beside them. So the narrative didn't change. How I felt about things didn't change. But yeah, because I was working beside them, I was able to also interact with them on a deeper level and show them sympathy and empathy, and then be the natural problem solver when we would have communication.
Yeah.
So they would be more open to receiving my
deep rapport.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as we started to grow and I was not able to work with them, I found myself in that middle place where I'm not changing what I'm saying, but they are not receiving it as well because I'm not having that personal rapport. And it was I pushed through to the other side of, I have a close internal team of 7 or 8 that I surround myself with. Mm-hmm. They know I'm going to be me. Don't water me down. They don't try and water me down. They do not try and change me. But there is a filter that passes through them when they talk to the people that I really want to impact. But since I don't have that personal rapport with them, they get the filtered version, not directly out of my mouth, but through my team that is watering it down to make it a little more palatable for their consumption, to still yet try and get through to them without the raw, abrasive that it was once acceptable. Mm-hmm. And in that middle, I was really, really, really struggling. And now I've gotten back to where it's a little more comfortable because the core people around me accept me and appreciate what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to accomplish.
And you're like exercising your influence down the ranks instead of like direct control, micromanagement.
Yeah.
I think that, to me, that sounds like exactly how that machine should function.
Okay, well, maybe I'm not doing something. Trust me, I mean, we have this debate all the time. There's many things that I'm still doing wrong.
But sometimes you just have to realize, like, 100% efficiency and efficacy just doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. Like, you're always going after it, but, sometimes I've changed things that were working plenty good enough already. It was a mistake to change them.
For the sake of change?
Yeah, because I wanted something better than 85%. Mm-hmm. When it's just about perspective. When you realize, man, 85% like effectiveness is pretty damn good in business.
Yep.
In the wild west of free market enterprise.
Well, because I've said, and I talked to them about that, where I'm like, you can't expect 100%, 100% of the time.
Right.
So if you can get 80% out of people, and just know that, like in the business, where, and even in the bar business, you can look over a timeline and say, we're going to be really busy between 5 and 6 o'clock. But the point is you don't have any more control than that of saying, in this time period, we're projecting that we'll probably be busier, but we could be a little bit busier or we could be a lot busier. So it's like, I need 80% out of you. But when the rush is on, I need that 100% out of you for that time that you're in the rush. And then it's totally fine to dial it back to that 80% as of a realistic expectation.
Yeah, that's when you do your Braveheart speech, man. I'm out there and you're like, all right, today we're all going to do better than we normally do because we have to.
Exactly.
People are counting on us.
No, you bring me back to it because one of the books that I read early on was called Radical Candor, and it really resonated with me, and I probably went overboard with it because of how well it resonated with me, and that's where I started bumping up against those generational confines of they're more sensitive, and you go back to that, a few good men, you can't handle the truth, and that's where that abrasiveness has come from me, where it's like, I'm sitting there seeing the beauty of personal accountability, and I'm like, this is just so great if everybody would just do this, but you can't get everybody on board to do anything. Much less the best thing.
True. That's absolutely true.
The one thing that I know that the dead horse that I believe that I will continually speak about is that the people that go online for social media to glamorize entrepreneurship are full of shit. And I have like that. There are some people where I'm like, I'll mince words because I don't want to offend, but I won't mince words when it comes to the people that are online just glamorizing entrepreneurship. Like, you're lying to people, you're not doing anybody any favors, but then segueing into something that, I mean, you have a personal experience with, maybe you have a better personal experience than I did. I think that a lot of people look online, and right now, one of the best in the business and in social media is Layla and Alex Hormozy. And they are a husband and wife duo that they kill it. I mean, they kill it in business. They're killing it in their relationship. And I don't fault them at all for their success, but I think that most people get this preconceived notion of, as a guy, like, oh, well, I need my Layla. And I'm like, the reality is 99.9% of the time, like, you never find somebody that so complements you in life and business that it not only clicks, but it is a heavily fruitful relationship to have that dynamic.
Yeah.
And I had a similar dynamic that failed miserably. It almost killed my business many times until there was a separation, because I was like, two people can't steer the ship. One person has to lead, and this is not going to work, and I had to change my entire business structure. I know enough to know that you and your wife are both entrepreneurs. You both have the entrepreneurial spirit, but I don't know the dynamic of what you have found that either works for you or doesn't work for you, or the realities of a husband and wife that obviously you both have very strong wills. I mean, it takes strong will just to be an entrepreneur in general, but to make it work, because so many problems can be created in business. And when you carry them back home, like, that's why I'm a proponent of, like, separate that stuff. How does that work for you and your wife? I mean, is that
that's a really, really good question. I do have I can shed some light on that. I think accurate light on that. The first thing you asked me, you talked about was the glamorous entrepreneurship persona brand thing that happens online. I don't get too upset about it. I think there's a difference between entrepreneur and business owner now.
There's definitely a fair distinction to be. Yeah,
there's a distinction that's growing. I consider myself more the business owner type.
Okay.
Even though what I do is entrepreneurial by definition. If you say entrepreneur, people think of the person in the virtual world, showing pictures of their Ferrari and telling you how you can get a Ferrari too. That's a little different. They do a different thing, and a lot of them don't have a physical location or assets. They do like drop shipping, and they just create brands and create salesmanship and stuff. And I don't think that's necessarily bad. It's different than what I do.
Okay.
Some of them online are just full of shit. Mm-hmm. Just completely. And you can usually tell if they're trying to sell you a superior product or service, or are they trying to sell you an idea? Is what I really look for. I'm like, well, what is it exactly you're doing? You're going to sell me that I could do something. I'm going to pay you to tell me how I could do something. That isn't always bullshit, but that's a good indicator it might be bullshit.
Well, because more often, and I'm not saying that this is the case all the time, but more often than not, when I see people that are out creating information packages for sale,
Yeah.
I know enough about the industry to know that the industry is so hard that the individual figured out they can make more money by selling you information about the industry than you can actually make trying to execute inside of the industry itself.
Yeah, well, and if they have a track record of success in it, it's probably good information.
Yes.
But if you look at, their page doesn't list the companies that they own, or there isn't accomplishments, they didn't themselves create success in that area, it's not very likely their information is going to be useful. Why didn't it work for them?
Exactly.
Well,
and I mean, and I will go to Gary Vee, just because he uses a very distinct word. He's proud that he's an operator. And I think that there's distinction there when you have those online entrepreneurs. They're not necessarily operators. Operators are business people that are literally operating and responsible for a culture and coordinating large groups of people. I don't know if that's the direction you were going as far as entrepreneur to business person, but I would describe you as an operator, I guess is what I'm getting at.
That's probably a better word. Yeah, because you can be a business owner but have no say-so, like just own shares. But yeah, definitely a small business owner is just, it's assumed that you're operating at some point because, capital isn't there to pay people to think. It doesn't. Yeah.
And you know what, towards that end of it, difference between small business and big business, the distinction is that in big business, if you're going to create something new, they will start by hiring a CEO and a COO and a CFO. They start at the top of the tree and they build down. Small business, we start off with no capital, so we start off as us. And then we hire a cashier or a customer service representative, and then we hire a waiter, and it's built from the top up.
Right.
Or from the bottom up.
I know what you mean,
Yeah. And I mean, they're completely different worlds. And when you end up with startups where they're massively capital infused, I'm like, I don't know what it would feel like to be able to have so much money that I'm like, I got this big, brilliant business idea. I'm going to start by hiring a CEO and then letting them build down to bring it to fruition.
That's a different animal for sure.
Absolutely.
And that's not one I have much experience with. Not yet.
Yep, not yet. There we go. Yet being the key word.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that I could add much more to that. The partnership with your wife or your spouse or your family working, that whole thing is interesting. I think generally the most effective strategy is going to be to not try to do that. Like that's the reality of it. It's hard enough to have there's a lot of negotiating that goes on between two people in just running their household and being good in that relationship. And that's primary. That's the absolute most important thing you can do. Adding running a business together to that, that's a dangerous strategy. And I don't think that's what you should be shooting for. I do it. Me and my wife do it, and I think we do it well. And it does actually make the business better than if it were just me or just her. It does actually have better results, but it's a long list of challenges that are always there, and you really want your relationship with your spouse to be about your family. And when you make it half of it about your family and half of it about your business, and you have to pick it up and put it down, and that's difficult. And there's a lot of reasons. For example, your wife could be like kind of mad at you, And if you run a business together, you could just double those.
I can attest. I can literally attest.
Sometimes I'm like, wait, did I make her mad here or at work?
Because they can go both ways.
Yeah.
You could end up with a personal conflict that gets carried into the business, or a business conflict that gets carried into personal.
Yeah. And it's tough to have a business partnership, tough conversations when it's your spouse and you love them a lot and care about them a lot. Sometimes it's a little bit harder to be like, no, damn it, I think you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're screwing this up and I want you to quit it. Like, that's easier when it's just your business partner. You know what I mean? But, you know, you can get a better result if you're willing to take on those challenges, but you're risking your family, which I'm not sure is worth it if you have a choice.
And we talked about this, that I can look back and just to be honest and say, like, on the overall, it was not worth it. And that was, it didn't matter that it wasn't worth it. I had already made the decision to take that step.
Yeah.
And the consequence was I lost my family. Like everything broke up because there was too much intermingling between the business and the personal, and it ended up wrecking everything. And then I come back to okay, well, if I don't focus on the business and you think I'm a piece of shit now, wait till the entire business fails and then I'm not able to support everybody. You really think that I'm a piece of shit. And it was, I look back at those sacrifices where, it's hard enough to do it without adding that extra layer of complexity. And then the potential misery of always taking a problem from one environment to another and never being able to get right with somebody that you love.
That's right. And it really takes a lot of the mystery out of things. Like, it's kind of better in a relationship if you don't both know everything about each other's every minute of every day.
Mm-hmm.
That's a challenge that I think people probably overlook. Like, just being able to tell your wife or your husband about your day is extremely valuable. But if they already know, like, what do you talk about?
Or,
You know?
I mean, to another level, expecting them to have any type of sympathy or empathy for what you're going through, only to have them look back at you and go, yeah, I'm living it too, and you should be having sympathy and empathy for me. That's
Yeah. It can go right off the rails like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that is my reality. Even though we're good at it and we're successful at it, and I believe it does turn out better results than I could do on my own, for sure, it still falls off the rails all the time.
Something you wouldn't advise anybody else to necessarily lead with, that I need to find my mate so that we can go into business together first and foremost.
Yeah, I don't know. Personally, I wouldn't recommend seeking that out, even though I love it and it works for me. There's a lot of reasons probably why it works for us. I can't speak for my wife, but I was married before, and my entrepreneur journey ruined that.
Okay.
So I learned a lot from that mistake, what goes wrong. Also, I've always had a lot of business partners.
Okay.
I like working with partners, in various degrees in different ways. So I was already very, very experienced with working with other people on that level when me and my wife started doing it together. So I think that helped a lot from my perspective.
Did you have those pointed conversations to lay ground rules? And then secondarily, did you develop roles to try and keep each other out of your lanes?
That's a really good question. Just by good fortune, we're very different people in business anyway. She's very much a front man.
Okay.
She's a good salesman, a good cheerleader, a good hype man. She's a good brand person, great with social media and marketing and advertising. She loves all that stuff. She's incredible at it. Those are all the things that are way further down my list of strengths. Mine's in administration and planning and execution and actual development and stuff like that. So we've already had a good cooperative like a counterpart set of skills that worked really well together. I think there is overlap. There are things we're both good at, and I will say there are things that I let go of more than I would if it wasn't my wife, for sure.
Okay.
Like when she says, well, I got this thing, like maybe, well, here's a good example. I'm perfectly fine with managing call-offs and requests off and holding people accountable for not showing up when they said they would and stuff like that. That's a terrible task for her emotionally. Like, she doesn't love doing that.
Is it because she takes it personal, or is it just not a strength? I'm saying that because that's what comes out in me.
Yeah.
Like, I look at my businesses like babies, so when somebody calls off or creates a problem, I'm like, now my child is affected, and I take it personally, and then that passion comes out.
I'd say you'd have to ask her, but it's probably something along those lines.
Okay.
It's a confrontation to her. She feels it emotionally as a confrontation, and I don't.
Okay.
I don't know. I guess it's because of all the hundreds of thousands of times I've had to do it in the last 20 years that it doesn't feel like anything to me. It's just me communicating. It's me doing my job.
Okay.
But she's much better at handling the overall regular schedule than I am for people, because she's very accommodating to what they want to work and why, and that's a whole thing. So we're actually working on the same thing and doing different parts of it at the same time, and it works really beautifully. Like if they want to change their schedule, or we need to add a person to add a new schedule to the system, she negotiates all that with them beautifully. And then when they want to call off, they have to call me. So
no, that's fair, because it's like you put a plan together and she's executing the mainstay of the plan, and then when people deviate from the plan, then they got to deal with you.
Yeah. And that is an example where the situation seems to work, because my insensitivity is not great for negotiating like the regular schedules for everybody. And she's much stronger at that than I am. But when it comes to holding them to it, that's where my strengths come in.
Okay.
It doesn't bug me.
No, and that makes, you never take it to feeling. You keep it completely in logic.
Yes.
We had an agreement. You were coming in at this day, this time.
That's right. Yeah.
You broke the agreement. We're having a conversation.
Yeah, I don't have to hype myself up to have that confrontation. I just say, hey, man, remember that thing where you're supposed to show up to work today?
Remember that thing?
You didn't do it. So.
Somehow I'm thinking that's going to be used right there.
So maybe going forward, you can go ahead and
actually do
show up. Yeah, that'd be cool. But no, I don't take that to heart. And I get it. There are some things that bother me more, and it's great to be able to share in a cooperative relationship with somebody where you can both sort of take on things that fit what you like doing and your strengths better. That is a benefit for sure. And there's some times where I'm like, something needs handled, and I'll step out of it. I'll be like, I think you would handle this way better than me. So that's a cool thing to have.
It's to stay in that, a semblance of that vein. I mean, obviously, if you guys, you're attracted to each, sometimes it's opposites attract, but I'm like, in business, you got to celebrate the wins.
Mm-hmm.
But you got two of you. Do you guys celebrate the wins the same way? I mean, and I'm referring to even like vacations and like personal desires in general, because I know that you're getting ready to take off, and I don't know whether it's just this is something deeply you've been wanting to experience, or whether this is I did really well this year, and my reward is I'm going to go do X as an experience in general.
Yeah, we do stuff a lot differently than that. I always have the call for adventure and go into the unknown. So I usually once a year I do something that's way outside of normal or my comfort zone, whatever it is. It's diving or hiking or backpacking in a country where I don't know anything about it.
That scares the shit out of me. I'm not going to deny that. That's that. When I think about it, it gives me anxiety to the point.
It
where
excites the shit out of me. It brings me back to life, recalibrates my sense of openness. Yeah, and keeps me inspired to be walking into the unknown. Walking into the darkness, looking for what I don't know, that kind of thing. That's how I am. And she shares some of those qualities, but she does not share my passion for those sorts of adventures. She's been on plenty of adventures, but that's usually something I do. Well, this time I'm going with my sister. My last one I went with a good friend of mine, lifelong friend, and I go alone a lot.
Really?
So I like that in its own right.
I'm sorry. And I mean, for the listening audience, I mean, this dude's taking a sabbatical and he's literally going into the jungle. Like that's, I don't know. Awe-inspiring views and vistas are gorgeous to me, but that's stepping back and taking in the forest.
Well, that's a pleasure.
Yes.
I don't go
The
out
thought of
seeking pleasure that
going down and literally getting close into the trees, that's not. It gives me a level of anxiety because there is so much of a primal unknown going into that environment that I'm like, obviously it gives you energy. That would totally.
I find it very useful.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. But I know not everybody would.
No. Like,
but we do celebrate some things together. Like, she likes, like the all-inclusive resort spa day thing. And so do I. I do like that as well.
I don't see anything wrong with the pampering. I don't think that I could live it 24/7, but as a reward and as a...
I'll say something very unpopular. I think as a man, that would be dangerous to do too often.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I think definitely should spend time making sure you stay strong in your character. Preferably your body too. But yeah, I think if I went to the spa every day, it wouldn't take very long before I was like a weak emotional mess and not useful to anybody.
Fair. But let's
That's going to be very unpopular.
No. Well,
that's just for me.
Again, we've talked about this. I mean, highest forms of vibration, thought, and then truth. And sometimes the truth hurts, and it's not about what's popular, it's about what's true. And I'm like, I don't think that we should veer away from truth just because it's not popular. That's where personal development. Yeah. Personal development is work, but there are extreme payoffs to be had for a higher quality of life for that work. And like, I just don't, life is not worth, quality of life is more important than life itself. Like, if I have a very low quality of life, I can understand not wanting to draw air. I don't have the survival instinct to say I need to breathe just because I can breathe. If I am in dire pain and I am mentally and physically miserable, I know me to know I would be fighting against that, to fight back to mental and physical health. But if all of that had deteriorated in such a way that there was no coming back from it, I would not want to draw air because there's just no point living just for the sake of drawing air. Mental and physical health are like top priority for me, especially as I'm getting older.
Yeah.
And I know that you do put a fair amount of emphasis on that in your own life.
Yeah. I like the way you said that. What I notice about it is, well, generally, here's just some observations that are true. When my businesses are doing the best, it's almost always immediately following a period of my life where I'm personally doing the best. And whenever my businesses do the worst, it's always immediately following a period of my life when I was doing the worst as a person. So you can't overlook that strong correlation. But when I look objectively at what it is that makes me do well as a person, spa day just doesn't really add up. Like usually when I'm screwing up or I'm what I do to turn myself around is almost never a small day. It's doing some work that I've been avoiding. It's telling myself some truth I've been avoiding. It's abandoning some idea I should have abandoned a while ago. Like it's finding something of deeper meaning, and it's finding some challenge that I'm not overcoming that I should be. That's usually what turns me around as a person and turns my business around when it needs turned around. It's just, objectively speaking, it's almost never a small day that turns it around. It makes me feel right.
Do you go out of your way to actually put challenges in front of you?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, I mean, some people just take the challenges as they come.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's always plenty of challenges in life that are going to come at you.
True.
Others, myself included, like I go out of my way to place challenges in front of myself to prove to myself that I haven't lost my edge, to prove to myself that I still have that dedication, devotion, discipline, that I'm still capable of accomplishing hard things without just waiting for them to come be placed at my feet.
It's great. It's interesting that you said prove to yourself, but it is true, like to keep a good sense of confidence and self-worth and self-reliance. It is a good idea to have real wins.
Mm-hmm.
When you have, people can talk themselves into feeling confident, but when you have real evidence, because you're actually accomplishing challenges, you're undeniably self-reliant.
Mm-hmm.
You can't even convince yourself you're a piece of shit. When you can see yourself winning, you can't even convince yourself you're not. So there's something that's definitely useful for that.
No, I've noticed on that end of it, because I want to say I'm guilty of it. I'm saying I have felt it. Imposter syndrome.
Sure.
Imposter syndrome has never been an issue for me until I start comparing myself to others. And I know that it is natural for human nature to always be comparing, but I always look for, well, I want realistic, so I'm not going to compare myself to people that I know I'm automatically going to be better at or doing as good at in any lane. I always, in comparison, end up choosing people that I like rightfully. I know they're doing better than me, and then I will pick it apart of somebody, be like, they're in the same industry and they're doing better than me. And then I'm like, well, do I have even a right to be at this mic? Or they're at a younger age and they're doing better. It's always finding one category of something and then bringing that back and projecting that back onto myself. And that is where I will struggle. And that's a lot of the reason where I will put those harder challenges in front of me to overcome that, to not beat myself up about comparing things. I got no bit. We don't walk in each other's shoes. So I have to mentally overcome that, because I see that I do that to myself.
Yeah, and it's tough in this day and age where everybody's greatest success are all published and put in your pocket and your phone. It's right in front of you all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's really comparing yourself to other people. It's mostly not useful. And
absolutely agreed.
A little bit of that can be useful if there's somebody near you that's like just the next step ahead of you and you're trying to figure out how to get there. Like, sure. Other than that, it's pretty useless. And it's especially useless when you're comparing yourself to a virtual representation of somebody else. It's digital world bullshit. It's not real life. Like, could you imagine if we all published our real life on social media?
I would prefer it because I want real.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what if it was a requirement for every good thing you put on there and every good picture you have to match it with.
And you go the other side of it. Like I'm not a proponent of airing your dirty laundry. Like nobody wants your fucking dirty laundry aired online. But to see the real. To understand, no, it's not this white house with this white picket fence, and it wasn't just given to me.
So we all know the online personas are not a true representation. So we should all know better than to compare our real lives to those fake lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. Well, if you keep yourself busy enough and you take on enough challenges and you have a good plan to accomplish your vision right in front of you, you don't have time to compare yourself to people anyway. You have something to do today.
Toward going down that vein, I was watching a video, and it was Alex Hormozy, and he pointed it out. He was talking to this guy about something, and this dude was coming up with a bunch of excuses as to why he didn't eat this or he ate this, and he's like, dude, you're not hungry, you're bored. And it clicked like,
yeah, idle hands, man.
Yes,
Yeah.
I will eat food that I shouldn't be eating, not because I'm hungry or because I needed nourishment. I was just bored. Smoking is a bad habit. It's one of the last bad habits that I need to kick. And I will, if idle hands, I will smoke more. And I'm like, well, I didn't need more nicotine. I was just bored. And idle hands.
Found that into every area of your life. Absolutely. I agree with that. I will show you something right now. That people think this is so strange, but I have a calendar, a schedule. Every minute of my life is on the calendar.
Oh, wow.
This is today. What I'm eating, when I'm eating it, what I'm thinking about, when I'm thinking about it, like what my objective is, when I'm having free time or creative time or makeup time, it's all scheduled.
And my business coach is like, student of your calendar. Like I got
this helps
pretty damn close.
It helps me navigate the future in a direction I want it to go.
Okay.
And a lot of people look at it and they get the wrong idea. They're like, oh man, it'd be crazy to be a slave to a calendar like that. I'm control freak or whatever. I'm like, okay, hold on. It's the opposite if you try it. Because I can be as spontaneous as I want anytime I want, because I know exactly what it will affect in my schedule. So I don't have to have the anxiety of not knowing what catastrophe will happen if I decide to leave work right now and go skinny dipping. I know exactly what's going to happen to the minute, what I'm going to miss, what I'm not going to miss, what I have to reschedule. So I get to do, whatever I want.
That's a good, I mean, I hadn't really taken the thought of it that way. That is a very good frame, that your schedule is not set in stone. You can rearrange your schedule if something spontaneous pops up.
Yeah.
But by having the actual schedule, you truly know what is being affected when you decide to be spontaneous.
Yeah. So I feel comfortable doing it. I just have to, because I know what I'm going to be giving up. Fine. Easy. I didn't want to do that thing anyway. Like, the other thing is, it is the one area to where I do seek power and control. Usually I stick to strength and influence in the world, but yourself is the thing you can control.
Correct.
The thing you should be controlling. And that's where your power lies. So I do control my future self. And I think, well, that's my strategy. For what?
No, it works for you, because that's the thing right there, is that everybody seems like, oh, they're looking for this magic silver bullet, and I just don't think that those exist. But you have found a strategy that works for you, and it is malleable. It's not rigid and hardcore.
Oh.
It's just a very basic, simple structure that you operate off of.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be the same for everybody, because everybody's going to have their own circumstances. But it is important to find what does work for you.
Yeah, and that's what I do every 6 weeks. Well, my schedule, my calendar takes me to a goal I'm trying to accomplish, whatever. It takes me toward the next step or some growth or whatever. And 6 weeks later, I redo it. You don't want to keep the same one forever.
Okay.
Or else you'll be doing the same thing forever.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the goal, right? So, yeah, it works for me, and it may not work for everybody, but everybody should have some way to orientate themselves. Like, how are you pointing yourself in what direction tomorrow? Like, specifically, like, I want to do well tomorrow is not a plan. You know what I mean? Like, I want my business to grow next year. That's not a plan. That's an idea. Ideas are great. Make a plan. How are you going to do that? How are you going to do that every day? And we started talking about this because you were, what were we talking about? You were talking about the influence of, what were we talking about?
I think we ended up starting to go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, it started with working with your spouse.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Well, I mean, that's and then we ended, then it started going down reward. I mean, where you found your actual rewards.
Yeah.
Because I mean, don't get me wrong, that's the whole, I posted this online. I'm like, entrepreneurship, like you can't master anything because you got to be great at everything. There's so many different facets of business that you don't have the money to hire all of these specialists from day one. So you got to have a little bit of a base knowledge of everything and be pretty damn good at everything in order to keep it all going.
And you were talking about challenges too, challenging yourself every day. That's what made me think of my calendar, because I start off with like exercise, meditation, yoga, and like ice water bath, which will be the most difficult thing I'll do every single day. And then every single day, I don't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole point of it. So,
we talked about that, where like, I know that there are health benefits to the ice bath. I have done some incredibly hard things. So I've proven to myself that it is, that I mind over matter. I have control of it. I don't like ice baths.
you don't.
That's so I choose not to do them because I know that I am capable of doing them. And because I have accomplished some rather hard things in general, that is not something that I put in front of myself in general.
It's fair enough, dude.
But you're saying you do that is the putting it in front of yourself on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty, like, that's the hardest thing that you will do in the day, because it is that mental challenge of doing the hard thing.
Like 45 degrees in here.
Drank some beers last night, so when I woke up I was dehydrated, and I drank like a whole liter of water, and none of it came out of me.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh no, it's all gonna come out of me when I get there.
Wow. So let's it's like that raw honesty and truth. Principles for success in business and life. Things that have the bigger picture served you well, that you feel like due to those principles is what allowed you to get where you are today.
I know a lot of people in business have like real specific functional principles for running business. I try to leave those ideas to be held a little bit more lightly than that. I usually stick to like a little deeper principles, like be able to tell yourself the truth is an activity that's actually pretty difficult to do. That principle will save you a lot of trouble. And always do things for the right reasons and do it the right way. It'll turn out that how you do something matters way more than if you do. For sure.
I'm totally down with that, because it's you
can't lose.
No,
if you do it right.
I mean,
even if you fail at being successful with it, you still didn't lose.
Yeah.
And that becomes important. And then my primary principle is that you and your personal growth and your business growth need to happen together. And I have a good reason for that besides the ones I mentioned earlier. It's also like success is difficult too. People don't think about that who've never made some money, but it's a whole new list of difficulties that you need to be prepared for. So like, let's say you made a bunch of money, but you hadn't handled any other aspect of your life very well. The first thing you'll end up trying to do is get the personal successes. And so you're working it in reverse order. sort of. And it's pretty hard to be a good person when you have, if you don't have that like set already and you get a bunch of money. I mean, there's a reason every religion says something like, you know, it's difficult for a rich man to get into heaven or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
This is, you know, it's difficult when you get a little bit of money to not let yourself get in some bad ways, you know, or at least do things that aren't not helping you grow stronger. Certainly you can afford to have a spa day every day. But you want to have the strength to not do that. You already want to have the habit and routine and the will to do difficult things and challenges and keep growing. And yeah, so that's my principle, is make sure you're growing yourself along with your business. Protect yourself from success.
Well, I mean, because when you get into the money side of it, it's like, I don't think money will turn you into a bad person. I think that you're already a bad person, and the money just allowed you to amplify the person that you are. So,
right.
Good or bad, money is not the deciding factor. It's just the amplifier of what was already there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's why the principle of growing yourself with your business is a good idea. Like, sure. Well, if you need proof, look at people that win the lottery.
And a different vein, but along the same track. What's your feelings on generational wealth?
Well, I don't know anything about it except what I read in the stories. Like where we're from, it's not a thing.
Well, I mean, and I say that I guess to lead a little bit more. You hear all of the talk about, well, why are you doing this? Well, because you should want to build a legacy, and you should want to pass on your wealth to the next generation. I personally am anti both of those things. That doesn't necessarily make me right or wrong. It's just the perspective and the lens that I view life and the world through. But I'm always interested to hear somebody else's take.
Does it?
No.
It very rarely does like the lineage of like wealth and success keep growing and producing like better and better people.
And it's the producing better and better people.
Yeah.
Because it's like second and third generation businesses die at such a staggering rate. And I'm like, well, a first generation business, just getting to that success is beating staggering odds.
Mm-hmm.
But it got built out of a deep appreciation and understanding of the sacrifices that it took to get there, that those things are not transferable to second and third generation, because the words are not as impactful in the transfer as the actual experience. And once that wealth is gained, that experience of what it took to get there, that time has passed. Those generations are not able to experience that.
Yeah. Maybe that's a good way to notice that the real wealth that you can pass down is wisdom and love and routines of negotiating well in life and relationships and that stuff. The personal piece of it,
mm-hmm.
the growth part is the wealth you should be passing down, I think. Giving a kid a few $1,000,000 or a trust fund certainly doesn't seem to help them.
I honestly cannot pick like not even one instance of saying it turned out well.
Yeah, it seemed like there should be a lot.
There should be a lot, but there's not.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some, but there's definitely not as many.
And if you look back too, I was just thinking of like, well, since men think about the Roman Empire often,
I still never, again, I rarely mindlessly scroll on social media, but that was where I caught this, and I'm like, what the hell is this about? I don't understand where this whole Roman blah, blah, blah came from.
I just hear about that stuff secondhand.
Okay.
But I do actually think about the Roman Empire often. So it's a great case study.
And that's what Rosemary saying. I don't think about it, but when you say it, then I do think about all empires find a way of fucking themselves up.
Well, and to your point earlier, if you look at the Roman Empire specifically, the people that were in charge, because it was it was a lot of different kinds of government, but it had somebody at the top very often that was in charge of everything, one way or another. And when there was a period in time where they would adopt children, and the emperor would adopt a child, and they would choose them based on their qualities and from a very difficult upbringing. And I think like all of the best emperors of Rome came from that way. I'm pretty sure that most of them did. And the ones that inherited the empire were complete pieces of shit. They're the ones that brought the empire into ruins. So maybe there's all the evidence you need that instilling character and qualities in your kids is there's nothing you can do. You can't even give them the entire world, an entire empire. Will not suffice. Will not replace helping them develop their character.
Then we come back to that other side of it of legacy. And like, I laugh about legacy because I automatically take it to even looking up at the stars. I'm like, I don't know where this grandiose self-importance comes from on an individual level, much less on a societal level, that like, we are not the most intelligent life form in the universe. And anybody here on Earth thinking that they are, like, are you kidding yourself? All you got to do is look up and think about the magnitude of what you are looking up at. And if you think the human race is the most intelligent, like, you are full of yourself. And then so it's very easy for me to bring that back down into legacy. Legacy of what? You're not that important. You're not going. Most people are generally not remembered but a couple years past their life. The good ones might be remembered 50 or 100 years past their life. The great ones might be remembered 300 to 500 years past their life.
We're all dust and bones.
That's what I'm saying. So, like, I have a real hard time attributing any time thinking about legacy or any legitimacy to actually thinking about taking action that leads towards legacy just for the purpose of legacy. Like, even if you pay all of the money to get your name put on a building, sooner or later somebody else is going to come along with more money that your name will be taken off of that building and their name will go on the building. And
sure,
are you really worried about a legacy just by having your name live on because it's on the side of a freaking building? That's an interesting point. I have mixed feelings about it. It does seem very egoic, and it could be the wrong reasons. Like, what is your legacy? To be the most popular and family name? That's probably not going to work out. But legacy, the idea of legacy has convinced people to populate the earth and grow the human race. It gives people a reason to have children, maybe. And you just framed it in a manner where I can almost find the positive in it.
Well, and I think at some point when I look back in history, it used to mean something because families would have a crest, a seal, and a set of values, and they would want to grow that and keep those. So it meant something. To be the great-grandson of so-and-so, it meant something. People would know that you possessed these traits.
The lineages of.
Yeah, and you had this wisdom. But nowadays, that's not necessarily necessary. There's better ways to get wisdom than hope it got passed down just in your household. But I could see a good use for keeping the idea of a legacy alive if it were to mean something. Like, if it were the way to ensure that you were motivated to pass down, like, wisdom and encouragement to your kids and and have a family long-term vision would be a legacy. If it were a meaningful one, that's not a terrible idea. If it's to have your name on buildings everywhere and adorned by the most amount of people, that's probably a futile exercise.
I do appreciate the way that you frame that, because it, like, there's a part of me that was really going negative on, like, to the point of poo-pooing the word itself, because I just saw the unrealisticness of it or the negative aspects of it. But if you can frame legacy in the passing down of wisdom,
yeah, that could be your legacy, that, you know, this person's children and their children, grandchildren, they understand the world, and they seek truth, and they work hard, and that could be your legacy. That would be a good legacy to have. That they're a bunch of spoiled brats with trust funds probably isn't going to be a good one.
Mine have already, like, and this is where I got blunt, like, they know. I mean, I'm not saying I'm not leaving them nothing, but
yeah, fresh start.
Yeah, no, there won't be much. I mean, they're not going to have a bill burying me, and I'm not going to say that they're not going to pick up a couple nice things, but I have no intention of giving them life-changing wealth that allows them to even remotely decide that they don't have to work anymore. Like, because I'm like, if they accomplish that, they will have accomplished that on their own. And then that's a point of pride.
That's the best gift.
Yes.
Give a kid, yeah.
Absolutely.
We're on the same page with that.
So I asked Josh this, and it was, I don't know, maybe I saw it as a more of a profound statement because it really got me thinking. And it was because of, in a moment, I was working on something new, and Matt pointed this out to me, and I was like, oh, this is a really good question. I'm going to start asking other entrepreneurs this. Does boredom scare you? Are you afraid of being bored?
It definitely doesn't scare me. Sometimes, well, if I'm being honest, sometimes I remember being bored when I was in the constraints of childhood, and miss it.
Miss it?
Yeah, kind of miss it.
Okay.
Well, I mean, no, I'm just never bored for long. Just it's an opportunity to be creative in some way. So that's good. Maybe I don't understand exactly what you mean, because I feel like it's a choice. I don't ever have to be bored.
Well, no, and that's the thing, is the context, I guess, behind it that led to the question on the overall was that I think at this point, Matt has gotten to a point of appreciating it out of me, although he knows I'll go off the rails from time to time, that my brain doesn't stop, and I can focus on something so that we can move a ball forward, but I'm not so closed-minded and rigid in my focus that I won't allow myself to think or dream or mentally, if nothing else, pursue other opportunities. And in the midst of going down another rabbit hole, he was like, I think the issue here is that you're just afraid of being bored. And I've always taken the attitude, I would rather have a full plate and be worrying about things falling off the plate than be worrying about not having a plate that was full.
Sure.
And then when I looked at myself, it was like I realized, like, most people want to take pills because, oh, they've got anxiety. And I'm like,
I know what you're saying. I think I follow you, man. Like, I think you're driven. For sure you're driven. You're never just going to sit around and be happy about sitting around.
And that's the anxiety of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally follow. I think that's a shared thing among business leaders and entrepreneurs. Like, they're just never gonna not do that. So yeah, I 100% agree with that. I guess if I had fears, there would be more like, I'm afraid of being useless, or like ineffectual. But nihilistic. I'm afraid of being nihilistic. Like if I got to a point one day where I didn't feel like it was worth it to do new shit, to try hard at things, that scares me. I see that in people.
Mm-hmm.
That scares me.
You hit on another word, then. This is a completely different rabbit hole that I want to go down because I'm kind of curious about this. And you employ a bunch of people that say ineffective. So I was contacted by a lady and was, you know, I don't even need to mention the people. There was a prominent name that was looking to do an episode on quiet quitting and wanted to know if I was available to be a contributor. And I was like, yeah, I this is like, you struck a nerve with me. This is, I've hit, I've had to deal with this like before in general. And I have strong feelings about it in general. And she was like, great. Would you happen to be willing to bring somebody that on the air, both of you, we would like your perspective as an employer and their perspective as the quiet quitter. And I said, well, I have very strong feelings about all of this, and that they were framing it around generation. I said, that's why I hate labeling it as a generational thing. Regardless, no, I'm not willing to contact that individual. It took me a year to fire him, and I wish I would have done it sooner. And it's a personal sore spot because it was a personal failure on my account that I have prided myself on being able to inspire and build a team and move a group in a direction. And while I have dealt with a couple people, there's just one very specific individual that it was very much a quiet quitting situation. I was afraid to fire him for fear of the impact that it would have on other small businesses because of the knowledge that I would have to replace, the intimate knowledge that he had of the actual operation. But it was a personal sore spot to me because I was ineffective with him. I was not able to motivate him. And I feel like if you put somebody in front of me for a long enough time period, I will motivate you. It's just, I got to find what it is that motivates you. Not the same thing motivates everybody. And I tried to motivate this guy multiple ways with no success. I tried putting him in front of other members of the team and getting them to motivate him with no success. And then I put him in front of my performance coach. And when she refused to work with him and his personality, and she's like, I'm not saying he can't be motivated. I'm saying his personality is my Achilles heel. I don't know how to motivate his personality. And I'm like, I had so much faith and trust in her to say, if you're not even willing to coach him, he will never be a productive member of our team. And we finally come to okay, we're going to fire him and we're going to get rid of him. Firing people is a really hard thing for me just out of my union background. But the sore spot was that I look at myself and I'm like, I was ineffective at being able to motivate this individual. It caused pain to me. It caused pain to the group. It caused pain to the bank accounts.
Yeah, I don't like that feeling either. And I don't like feeling like I let them down. Because when somebody fails in my business, ultimately it feels like, man, if I could have got through to them and helped them in the right way, you know, they would have been more successful. Yeah, but I don't know. Are you asking what I think about that situation?
I mean, I'm curious if you've ever dealt with something similar. And I mean, even directly on the topic of quiet quitting, or, I mean, obviously, like I said, some people can be like, well, I'm ineffective. No, I don't think nothing about it. Like, no, that shit really drives home at me.
What's the quiet quitting thing? I don't follow.
Basically,
what's the idea?
The idea is I'm going to sit here and do nothing, next to nothing, as little as possible, and earn a paycheck and force you to move me.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Man.
It's you quit doing any real work, but you're still doing just enough
to not get fired.
Right.
Where
you were before trying to advance things.
Yeah.
But now you're just going to sit back and I'll respond to every 10th email I get, but not everyone. Not going to answer the phone anymore.
This is and the thing is, it's the generational thing, because in this wave after COVID of the mass quitting, then the new thing was this generation of quiet quitting. They're not quitting, they're still drawing a paycheck, but they're not doing anything to be productive and earn it or try and forward the organization that they're working
a lot more with the people that are able to work from home.
Right. And luckily I don't work much in businesses that produce like manufacturing or products or something like that, where that kind of thing could be hard to spot and could be rampant. I have dealt with people that quit on themselves. They quit on trying. But in my cultures, in my businesses, you can't go unnoticed. And you can't, it's more uncomfortable to do that than it would be to try. That's kind of our culture. Somebody's going to notice, you're going to have conversations, you're going to be confronted with, why aren't you trying? People around you are going to be succeeding and celebrating successes. You're going to stand out in the wrong kind of way if you're apathetic and like that. So I think I get to avoid that for the most part. What a strange thing that people would do that. I can't even wrap my head around it.
Dude, I
know it's a thing.
That's what I said. And I've dealt with a little bit of it when it comes to just unmotivation, but I'm like,
because
we have one that was just like.
Yeah, because my experience, people want to do well. They really do.
That's what I said. They're looking for a reason to be inspired, so you give them the reason and they feed into it.
And I've learned that in self is more of an incentive than incentives. I mean, people will work tremendously harder if they can be shown to do well, more so than they would for a bonus.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. So maybe I don't have a good point of view on this because I block it out. I'm just like, if you're that apathetic, you just don't fit in my world, and you definitely won't fit in my business, and you will stand out. But certainly I think you did the right thing protecting your culture and your other employees and your brand from that sort of thing.
It was painful. It was incredibly painful going through the entire process. And when we finally just decided to fire him, and I knew it would be, wish I would have done it 6 months ago. But yeah, because it had a devastating effect, and it finally came down to
what was the big deal? What was the,
honestly,
you don't have to share details.
I'll let you, because like I said, I have a very biased view because of the sore spot of me being ineffective. Maybe you're able to look at it from
what was the big deal about getting rid of him?
Getting rid of him?
Yeah.
Was just he had a specialized set of skills that we didn't have in-house.
Oh, so he was sort of leveraging you.
Oh, horribly.
Massive.
That's manipulation.
Yes.
I don't put up with that kind of
refusing knowledge transfer. Literally,
that's not part of the team.
No, not at all.
Oh, that's, yeah. He
yeah, that's just, I don't have much.
I don't know. We might have to cut this. I don't know if we're even allowed to.
Oh, no, we don't. I don't want to name the company or name the names or anything of that nature. That's
Can I say we acquired him?
Yes. He would have been in one of the employees that I acquired in one of my business transactions.
In the very first meeting, he was like...
So he never signed up to work?
Correct.
No, and that was
He was never on board. From the beginning, we're not friends, we're not talking, I'm not coming to any meetings.
It's interesting that he wanted to ride it out, though.
And yeah, that's the part that was just wild.
Well, and don't get me wrong, because there's further to this where I'm like, it's also interesting that he didn't, like most people, attempt to file unemployment, which we were fully prepared to fight. But then it was like, oh, well, you stole one of our clients that was ready to actually
and
start.
also quiet quit us.
Yeah, exactly. It was brutal. And the thing is it was like, it went away, and I didn't think anything of it until I got this unsolicited contact looking for input on quiet quitting, because apparently they had found that I had talked about quiet quitting in one of my
Real
previous
twist
podcasts.
is he actually reached out to them, and he already agreed, and they're trying to get you to go.
Yeah, well, no, that it would be hilarious, and I still don't know that I would be willing to give him any type of light on it. But it like, I mean, mine is like, good old-fashioned work for the sake of good old-fashioned work. It's a character builder. Like, it's okay to produce for the sake of being productive. That is a struggle with this generation, and I think that struggle with this generation, and it's our fault from our generation, that things have come to them so easy that the second nature is, well, of course, everything should come so easy. So if it has to come through struggle or effort, well, then it must not be worth having. And I'm like,
oh, the opposite's true.
The opposite is true. Exactly. That's how I mean, when I was a kid, everything was, we'll do this, it'll put hair on your chest. I mean, and it was the character building. And,
right. Yeah, well, I think a lot of that's innate in people. I think they find out. I don't think the whole generation, like, is, a lost culture. I think they're all maybe a little delayed in their maturation. They're going to learn that meaning comes through struggle and success over challenges. Maybe they don't do it as early. Some of them might do it way too late, like 40. Instead of 9 or 10. But I think there's lots of strong kids out there. I don't think it's everybody.
Oh, no.
And I think if we just give most people a chance, like, I've seen it myself. I won't call him out by name, but a young kid that works in one of my businesses, he got a real bad start. Raised by his grandparents. I don't think his whole raising situation left him with many skills. And he struggled on his own the first part of his life outside of his grandparents' home, but he very much so found a path on his own that started with hard work, struggle, responsibility, and taking on a lot of responsibility and seeing how much he could handle and finding deep meaning and success that way. And I was impressed.
I'm impressed just hearing it, because
Kid didn't get off a video game one day. A year later, he's raising kids, working out every day of the week, killing it at work, building his business within my business up, and just, on all fronts. Showing strength, success.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think every human's got it in them. All they need is a chance and somebody to tell them the truth. Really. See for themselves how strong they can be and how good it feels.
It's, again, I come back to, it's our generation's fault. And I say I'll take it as it's my... I think that is the Generation X produced a lot of good things. Generally all of the technologies that are making life easier right now. The baby boomers gave us a free world to dream and explore, and we created all of these technologies that have made all of the lower generations' lives, like, information is more easily accessible.
Yeah, you can get pretty abstract with trying to assess how one generation affected the next. It's hard to tell what's right and not right. one thing I know that I believe to be right is that we can't have kids being raised without parents. Like we ran this whole experiment. For better or worse, the single mom thing is not the best way to raise all the kids of a generation. Like, it doesn't work. The dad is there. It's not just my opinion. I'm not making any specific claims other than, like, if we want the next generation to have the tools they need and the good start, we got to figure something else out. This isn't working.
And I mean, and that right there makes me really reflect on, like, because, and I mean, I love my mom. We've gotten past our issues. My mom was a very selfish woman. At about 10 or 11 years old, my father looked and was like, if I continue to let this go on, like, bad things are going to happen. And he had a conversation with what was in my stepmother, and he took custody of me and my sister. They ended up in a divorce because she was not ready to go back to young childhood. Her kids were, I don't know, 5 or 6 years our senior, and and while she supported him in what he felt was doing the right thing, she wasn't ready to go backwards and start dealing with preteen kids, and it just was disastrous. Yep. But when I look at the effect my father had on my life, like, I have so much gratitude and respect for him, because I could see how my life would be completely different had he never taken custody and just been I hate to say absentee parent, but she had moved us to Bloomington and he lived in Lafayette, and I was lucky to see him 1 or 2 days a month, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, so you got to see both.
Yes.
Just not at the same time.
Correct.
Yeah, well, that's better than not. And by the way, I'm not knocking on, like, single moms specifically, just that strategy is a bad one. My mom was a single mom for a while. I admire the shit out of them pulling that off and keeping kids alive. Mm-hmm. But it just, and the only reason I say it as a single mom is because that's the way we decided to go with things. Like, I'm sure if we decided to make it a single dad generation, we would have a whole new set of problems and figure out that doesn't work either.
It would flip it the other direction.
Yeah, so, like, it seems like
I would have more confidence in the strength of the nation. But I mean, again, I'm not knocking, because again, I'm all about, I think I'm about female empowerment. I just don't want to destroy masculinity in the process. And I mean,
oh yeah, that's a whole other subject, but certainly you need both. I mean, humans have been around a while, and humans have been successful for a while, and we know some certain things work. And one thing's, you know, I like progressive ideas and reaching for the stars, but you can't just throw out everything that works. Mm-hmm. And two parents of different attributes raising children has worked for a very long time, and it works really well. And I don't think we've come up with a better way of doing it.
I don't know if the path that we're on is pointing us towards a better way.
Yeah, I mean, we tried some different shit out. Maybe it's a good time to objectively look at the results and decide, like, okay, we need to work as a community to figure something else out. I don't have those answers. That's above my pay grade.
Yeah. No, I get it. And I'm 48. I'm like, no, my kids are grown. They're out of school. That is a problem for the next generation to actually grapple with, because, it's moved out of the realm of.
If I could give a gift to every kid, it would be to have 2 parents. That's the best gift you could give a kid.
Absolutely agreed.
We need to figure out how to make that happen again as a culture. in my opinion.
No. I mean, it's like I'm being quiet because I want that to kind of sit there and like resonate with people. I don't know that plays well with the culture that they're pushing for.
Oh, you mean like the ideologues, like the progressive ideologies? I don't worry about them. Bad ideas always die. And when you create a pseudo religion and an ideology around bad ideas, like you're most of what you believe is going to die. Like that part of culture is going to die off. And it's not like it needs to be killed either. Anything that doesn't line up with reality properly just dies at some point. Reality will snap back and cut its head off.
We just happen to be living in the middle of it, or some of it right now. Then,
yeah. Well, the tension's high at the moment, and that's what happens when you're at the snapping point. And there's always a snapping point. You know, reality always wins. Truth always finds a way. And if getting caught up in a lot of bad ideas is dangerous. But that's the risk of being progressive. And progressives have gotten, well, every idea we have now that works, that we consider a conservative idea, was at one time a progressive idea. So for me, it seems weird that these people clearly play on the same team. But to them, they feel like they play on opposite teams. And I think it's also crazy that if you wanted to be the best progressive person you could be, you would want to stand on a tremendous amount of conservatism. You would want to be standing on a bunch of shit that you know works so you can reach for this one new idea and hope that you don't screw everything up. But the idea of abandoning every idea we know that works for a whole set of new ones that people believe they work because they're feelings
that's not weighing against logic, because even a lot of those ideas where they try and...
Yeah, well, that's just maybe if you get extremely lucky, that'll be true. But it's extremely unlikely. I've never seen any evidence in my life or anybody else's life where you can decide things that way. You have to use reason and logic, everything the Greeks said a couple thousand years ago, reason and logic and evidence and the cosmos, and test things out. If they don't work, have the guts to abandon them. Mm-hmm. If you have a bad idea and you find out it's a bad idea, be willing to change it, that kind of thing.
Well, and something that it was a challenge for me because, I mean, my mother was always it's okay to have feelings. And then it came to the realization like everything does start with feelings, but if it stays there, it ends up being very irrational, very obviously illogical. Like it's okay to have feelings, but you got to move it towards logic. Yeah. In order for it to have any foundation or basis worth exploring.
Yeah. If your feelings turn out an idea, that's called a bias. It's not useful. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It does seem like there's a lot of people that think that an idea that was made by their feelings is really useful, and they should infringe it upon other people. I have trouble following that logic.
That was a very kind way to put that.
Yeah.
That's just how I feel about it, though.
Matt, do you have any words of wisdom or questions to extract any more wisdom out of Mr. Ogle? I've appreciated this.
It's a good conversation.
It's always a good conversation. That's why I love being part of these. I'll tie it all together. He talked about firing people was a weakness for him. And then you talked about it being a strength for you, holding people accountable when it came to things like scheduling. So obviously, I don't think any of us enjoy there's some people we enjoy firing, but overall, I don't think we are thrilled to go do it. But is that something you find that you struggle with having to do, or is it just you know it's part of the job?
Oh, I hate it. There's very few things I can say for sure that I don't like. I definitely don't like it. I don't let it affect me. Why make a bad thing worse, right? You're talking about firing people?
Right.
Oh, man, it's just an admission of failure. Their failure, my failure, our failure together. Like, this is a bad day. It's the same kind of feeling. Like this is not going to resonate with anybody, but if you break your horse's leg, the rider and the horse are responsible, but the rider has to shoot the horse. It's a bad day.
Yeah. Facts.
But it happens. And you do have to shoot the wounded horse, I guess. And you do have to fire the person that's hurting your business.
Because the business comes first.
Yeah, that's your commitment to everyone else.
Right.
Your clients and your other employees.
And that right there is, I think that, I don't know, maybe we can find a better way of framing it inside of our training, because whether it be firing somebody or just simply holding them accountable, they have a hard time grasping that the importance of that is to the whole as a group, to the business. Like, it's like, I'm not being a shit and holding you accountable just because I want to hold you accountable. If I don't hold you accountable, you're going to have a negative effect on the rest of the group. Thereby, the business is going to fail, and then nobody's going to actually have a job. And it will all be because I didn't start by holding you accountable as an individual. They don't see that domino progression.
No, and that's the kind of shit I learned to not tell them while I'm firing them. Because they don't.
How about telling them that when you're hiring?
Is that when they throw the chair?
Yes, that's when they throw the chair. No, but I almost never fire somebody for performance. I almost always fire somebody for attitude. If somebody's failing to perform, but their attitude is right, and they are trying, and I can see there's evidence of them really trying, I'm probably going to ride that out for way too long, because it almost never happens that they're not, that they stay underperforming. Anybody with the right attitude who's also able to apply effort will perform. I believe in people, and they've never let me down. But when people have a bad attitude and they're not willing to try, and they're underperforming, I don't have a use for you.
Yep. No, and that's one of the reasons that firing is so painful for me is that I tell them all, like, I'm going to push you. I'm going to push you to get better, or I'm going to push you out the door, because you're going to get sick of me pushing you and you're going to walk away from me. I'm not going to fire you. You're going to actively choose to walk away from me because you're not going to respond to me continually pushing you to actually get better. And that was one of my biggest frustrations about the individual quiet quitter, is that I'm like, it did not matter what way you pushed this guy. You just sat there and kept doing nothing and kept drawing a paycheck and kept being difficult. And I was not successful in pushing him to personally walk away from me because he did not like the push.
So you changed your strategy.
At the end of the day, it was finally a forcing me to do what an employer is required to do, which is to fire people. Because in my 18 years, man, I don't know, if I was hard pressed, maybe I'd have to break one hand, but I don't think I could get past both of my hands on how many people I've actually fired. Like, you really got to fuck up for me to get to the point of saying, I am firing you. We are severing ties. I want you to walk away and never come back again. 99 times out of 100, it's they choose to quit because I just keep pushing for you to chase your potential, to get better and better.
Yeah.
And when you don't like that push, you choose to walk away from me. I'm not forced to actually fire.
You shine a bright enough light on it. They just, that's not a bad strategy.
It's worked well for the most part.
Yeah. Good.
Just the one really bad case.
Yes.
There's always an exception. There's always something that'll surprise you in entrepreneurship.
Yes.
And there's always times when your tried and true strategy too will fail you, surprise you, and you'll be like, damn it. Got me.
All right. You got any social media channels you want to direct people towards?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm asking it like that. No, I mean, normally it's a given, but you have always described yourself as being more comfortable being behind the scenes. And I know that in some of our conversation, it's been you're working towards moving yourself into more of a forefront position. So I'm like, I don't exactly, I'm leaving that option open to you. Is that if people want to find you, I mean, like, where would you direct them to find you?
Yeah, sure. The probably the best place would just be DustinOgle.com. My name's Dustin Ogle. Not too hard.
Yep.
But there's links to all my businesses, which my partners appreciate the support from people. And we do have some national and international brand stuff, not just local stuff. But also my links to my podcasts, which you're on one of them, which is a good episode, are on there. And I do have a book coming out this year, and that'll be available on there too. So I just made that site recently to answer this question better. I used to have this really crappy answer for that. I'm like, go to this Facebook, this Insta, this whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if you go to DustinOgle.com, you can probably find your way to anything I'm involved with.
And I haven't. I haven't heard the podcast. I just know that I know we had the conversation, but I haven't actually gotten on there to hear. I didn't know when it was actually going to be pushed into producing of the publication, I guess.
Yeah, it's published. So, but just publishing it doesn't reach that many people in the world. Yeah, the clips of it will be showing up on social media soon this weekend.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Oh, brother, no, that's what I said. I appreciate the conversation in general, and yeah, this dude came to me as a delivery driver, and not a bullshit delivery driver. I say that because most delivery drivers are like gypsy. Like, no, he strategically was earning good money, and it was like a career path that he had tried some different things, and this way he was able to pull a good living out of just simply being very proficient at being delivery driver. And
there's tricks to that.
Yeah, but then it progressed into kitchen manager, and then it progressed into store manager, and then it progressed into chief technology officer, because I finally got over my fear of technology, because I knew I had people that were really interested in it. But over time, it has turned into, he's been around me so long that I have exposed him to my brain in general, exposed him to different ideas, exposed him to different entrepreneurs, because he's a decade behind us in age. And I'm like, sooner or later, I will take less of an active role, and I'm trying to coach the people behind to be moving into that more of an active role in general. So,
great move.
Yeah.
It's nice to meet you, Matt.
Likewise. I like it. You got to keep learning. I mean,
yeah,
that's the name of the game.
Good call.
Yeah, he's one of the few that has not been afraid to take up the books when I'm like, because I'll read a plethora of books and then be like, okay, don't worry about this, but read this one and read this one. And he's one of the few that's like, okay, I'm ready for my next book. That's been just a total sponge for information.
Yeah, I don't have as much free time as somebody here to.
That's not about that. That is not fair. That is part of my I worked into my time and my morning routine that, yeah, I know that's just a different kind of work. Yeah. That's,
it's all work. Life is work.
All right. Yes, that's the pod. Again, questions, comments, concerns, snide remarks. We invite all input in general. And as always, please share the show. And until next time, you guys have a good night.